Hello, everyone. I'm Bo from Brutal Commentary, and today I'm going to be breaking down our next fight for UFC 324. In this one, we got Josh Hokit taking on Denzel Freeman. So, this is another sort of interesting clash, I guess you could say, in the heavyweight division. More or less control versus explosiveness. For Josh Hokit, he is someone I've been kind of keeping an eye on in this heavyweight division. 7-0 as a pro, a very good athletic career, former NFL player, former collegiate wrestler. I think he was a two-time Division I national champion. Taking on Denzel Freeman, who I sort of had some interest in when his debut was coming up last November on UFC Qatar. But then he fought Marcus Buyo in one of the worst fights I saw that year. It was just terrible sparring match, and sometimes it just felt like a fucking staring contest. I think I hit my minute mark. So, not great. Hey, but more on Josh Hokit. Like I said, he is someone I've been keeping an eye on. He's definitely someone I think to keep watching this heavyweight division. Kind of small for the weight class, 6'1", 236 pounds. Not a big guy, but he's very quick and athletic. James trains at a good camp with Jackson Wink, and I guess you could say he's like the Colby Covington of heavyweight, saying some more outlandish stuff to garner attention and, insulting his contemporaries. I also guess you could say he has a bit of the Chael Sonnen thing going for him because, he's like his last post-fight interview when he ran over Max Gimenez. He just what's the word I'm looking for here? Putting on the charm and all that stuff, or I say charm when really he was just rhyming and stuff. Still, I think Josh Hokit is doing something right for the heavyweight division. They need people like him, exciting, fun. Even characters just outside the cage. Like, I understand he's not really I don't think he really means half the stuff he says, but it's entertaining. People are going to pay attention to it. And now he gets another step up in competition against Denzel Freeman, who is, for sure, his best opponent to date. Hey, you look at, Denzel Freeman. Now, in terms of record, Freeman doesn't have that many fights to Hokit. He literally has one more fight, being 7-1 as a pro in comparison to Hokit, who's 7-1. But that being said, I think, Freeman's fought better competition for sure. I mean, that win over Steven Asplin is aged pretty well because Asplin is also another heavyweight that, people are keeping their eye on. So this for sure, I think, going to be an interesting a good litmus test for a Hokit. See how far he can go. If he can beat Denzel Freeman, I think he can go a little farther in the heavyweight division. But let's break down their styles. Starting with Josh Hokit, he is a pressure-first fighter whose game is sort of built around his physicality and control. As I mentioned before, he is sort of on the small side of heavyweight, weighing in at about the 236 range. At max, he could weigh in at about 240. Doesn't really, but it's ironic enough, but he's actually faster than most of the heavyweights he's competing against. And he's certainly stronger than most of the heavyweights the heavyweights he competes against, because he's very good at not just collegiate wrestling, but MMA wrestling. Difference being in MMA wrestling, the difference with using their jiu-jitsu positioning as well as ground and pound. That is something Hokit does very well. His ground and pound is very ferocious, very mean is the best way to put it. Just like really puts an emphasis on thudding power, trying to bounce his opponent's head to the canvas. And in general, his style is just make the fight exhausting, not just physically, but mentally, like make his opponents quit. He also does some interesting stuff, I guess, in the cage, like when he gets like a body lock. I've seen literally in his Contender Series fight, he will kick the cage to gain space. I guess he's doing that too, so his opponents can't try and build height by using the fence. It's actually pretty smart. I think another key part of his game is persistence. Even if the first takedown fails, Hokit's going to keep coming and he doesn't get discouraged. He doesn't abandon his game plan. I think over time, that kind of pressure can start to break down opponents. In terms of the striking, it is still a work in progress for sure. But Hokit seems to have natural power. He is, like I said, he's quick and athletic and pretty explosive. So he's able to generate enough power. And especially with that jab cross, like I said, he also, just bulldozed Max Gimenez. Didn't even need the wrestling. He just used the striking. But really, how good is Max Gimenez? That's the question. Now, looking at Denzel Freeman, he brings, I wouldn't not that much of a different approach. Freeman's also has a wrestling background. He was a pro wrestler, from my understanding, former Navy SEAL. But Hokit, has achieved a higher level of wrestling than Freeman. But both guys, former like NFL players, uh, where Hokit is, explosive, quick, athletic. Freeman is similarly explosive. I think he carries more natural power, being the bigger guy in there, weighing in about the 260s, especially early. And when Freeman throws, he throws with good intent. He throws with good power. Now, he himself has some good grappling and wrestling to his game. I mean, he did submit Stephen Asplin with a rear naked choke. And that was via quick transition too. When Asplin was getting up, that's when Freeman took the back and then cinched up the choke. I think Freeman's biggest strength for sure in this fight is his physical burst when he's fresh. If he can close distance fast and generate force quickly, that makes him dangerous early in fights, and particularly against opponents who are like starting to warm up. The biggest problem he has is he is so damn tentative. That's what the Marcus Bouillot fight was the biggest problem. Actually, for both guys, like they were very tentative. They were not throwing much. It was a sparring session essentially. Throw a leg kick, the opponent throws a leg kick. Freeman threw a strike, Bouillot throw a strike. They never once really threw much combination, nor did they capitalize once they actually landed. Like, Freeman has the power. It's just if he's going to be too tentative, it's going to be a problem against someone like Hokit, who's going to be in his face. Now, looking at how their styles clash, it really just comes down to who can control where the fight takes place. Because I think Freeman will want some space so he can burst at moments, like catch Hokit with a right hand or something like that. Meanwhile, Hokit wants continuous contact. In Freeman's face, using his wrestling, using his striking, just making Freeman work by consistently forcing contact. Kind of like a Merab-esque sort of way, in the sense that like how Merab is consistently wanting contact with his opponents and then forcing them to work. That sort of sense. Now, I think early on it will favor Freeman, or at least I think the fight will be 50-50. With Freeman, being fresh, being able to explode early, and like I said, even when he's tentative, if he does explode and catch Hokit, he could definitely hurt him. But I think the longer the fight goes, I think the more it favors Hokit because of Hokit's pressure and willingness to stay in Freeman's face, either attacking in the clinch or just consistently pursuing his chain wrestling. And I don't think, and even then, Hokit doesn't need like a perfect double leg or single. He just needs to force Freeman to defend. And I think over time, that contest sort of demands adds up. And once Freeman slows ever so slightly, I think Hokit's pressure and persistence will continue on. Now, Hokit's yet to go to a decision in his career. All of his fights are finishes. But I would think a former wrestler like him and a former NFL guy would have a gas tank to keep up. Then again, it is heavyweight, so you never really know how good their gas tanks is until you actually see them fight, like Stephen Asplin or like Cyril Gahn. I'm giving broad examples of heavyweights, but you don't really know how good a heavyweight's cardio is until you see him in action. But I would at least, hopefully willing, think that Hokit himself has good cardio, at least given his background. Same with Freeman too. He has good cardio, but again, with a style that relies more on explosive bursts and not continuous action, theoretically, that fighter would have good cardio. Now, going into my official prediction, I have to go with Josh Hokit in this one. I think Freeman is dangerous early, but I think Hokit is built for the long fight because of his pressure, clinch work, and commitment to control are tailor-made to neutralize explosive athletes who rely on bursts of speed and power. So I think as long as Hokit avoids big shots in the opening round or the opening minutes of the first round and sticks to a good game plan, this fight should swing heavily in his favor. I mean, the odds sort of reflect this as well. Hokit's a minus 400. And I think rightfully so. He has, I think, more upside. He's more or less on the young side of heavyweight at 28. And I just think his skills are tailor-made to beat someone like Denzel Freeman. And like I said, expect Freeman to have moments early, but I think once the pace intensifies and just rapidly goes downhill and continuously moves with contact, I think this is Hokit's fight to win. I'm going to pick Josh Hokit. I'm going to pick him via TKO. His ground and pound is, I think, just too nasty for Denzel Freeman. So once Hokit gets Freeman down, I think it's just going to smash him in top control and finish off with ground and pound. So once again, I'm picking Josh Hokit. I'm going to pick him via TKO. Oh, with that being said, that's been my prediction of this fight. If you like the video, like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below on who you think is going to win. But until then, I've been Bo from Brutal Commentary. And remember, stay calm, stay respectful, and enjoy the violence. I'll see y'all next time.